Good morning. I'm Frank Strada. I'm the Deputy Director for the Arizona Department of Rehabilitation and Reentry. Today, by the order of the Supreme Court, the state of Arizona carried out the death sentence of Clarence W. Dixon by means of lethal injection at the Arizona Prison Complex in Florence. Mr. Dixon was pronounced at 10:30 a.m. His last words, his last statement, and I quote, was, "The Arizona Supreme Court should follow the laws. They denied my appeals and petitions to change the outcome of this trial. I do and will always proclaim innocence. Now let's do this shit." End of quote. At this time, I'll turn it over to Judy Keene, our Director of ADCRR Communications.
Thank you, Deputy Director Strada. We will begin with our media witnesses who will be sharing their observations with you. The media witnesses will then be followed by Colleen Clace, who is Chief Counsel for the Arizona Voice for Crime Victims, and she is also attorney for Leslie James. Following Ms. Clace will be Leslie James, who is the sister of victim Dina Bowden, and she will be reading a statement. And with that, we will begin with Troy Hayden from Fox 10 News. Troy?
So we're going to be talking a lot about Clarence Dixon today, and I think before we do more of that, we should acknowledge Dina Bowden, who was 21 years old, a young woman, just about ready to graduate from ASU. I'm really glad we have a picture of her up here. And I also want to acknowledge her sister, Leslie, who's had to deal with this basically her entire adult life. And so I want to think about that before we talk more about this execution. The last execution that I witnessed was that of Joe Woods 8 years ago. We've talked a lot about that, the botched execution as it's called. That did not go as planned. This one did. This one went exactly as I think DOC planned for it to do. Dixon never made eye contact with us. He stared straight up into the ceiling the entire time. Something that was new is we were actually able to see the IVs go in. That's something that's never been done before, and it was a new rule that was just put in. So it took about 25 minutes, I believe, to put all the IVs in. They had trouble getting the IVs into his left arm. They made 2 attempts. Those were not successful. They then went to the right arm and went to his groin area. Those were successful. The whole time they were putting the IVs in, Dixon was insulting the doctors and questioning their intentions and their motives, and talking about other things that maybe the other witnesses want to repeat. I don't. At 10:13, the IVs were inserted and they were in. At 10:17, the death warrant was read by the warden, Rodney Carr. At that point, he did say, "I do," this is Dixon, "I do and always proclaim my innocence." And again, now let's finish this. At 10:19, the drugs went in. Something else that's new is we are actually able to see them pushing the drugs down the syringes. There were 4 different syringes on one side, 4 on the other, and we could witness as they were pushing those syringes into the IV lines. So the very first drug started going in at 10:19. After that happened, Dixon made another comment that, again, maybe some of the other witnesses want to repeat. I don't. At 10:22, so 3 minutes after the drug started going in, his mouth fell open and he appeared to stop breathing. At 10:27, the doctor came in and checked him. At 10:28, the warden said the inmate was sedated. At 10:30, the warden said the execution is complete and the curtains were closed. Anybody have any questions for me?
Can you talk more about the difficulty inserting the IVs?
So I don't know if you've ever gotten blood drawn or had an IV put in. Basically, the medical technician came in, inserted a needle in the arm, checked it, looked at it. I don't know exactly what they do medically. It was not good. Pulled it out, taped that area shut, put a little piece of cotton in and taped it down. Went to an area, I think they started here and then went to an area higher in his left arm. Did the exact same procedure. It wasn't satisfactory for whatever reason. Again, I'm not a medical technician. Pulled it out, put a cotton ball on it, taped it. Then went immediately to this area of the right arm, and that was successful. And then they removed, they took a little piece of, I guess it was like paper type cloth, and covered up his groin area, and then moved his pants up and inserted into his groin. But we could actually see most of that as it was happening. So that those 2 insertions were successful.
I think this is what's known as a cut down that's been performed in the past. Sure.
I'm not sure what a cut down is.
Okay. Could you tell if they had cut into his groin and opened up the...
You know, I believe that may have happened because one thing I did see was there was a small suture Did you guys see a suture? There was a suture that they came through, so maybe they closed that cut. I didn't see the cut actually made, but I remember thinking, well, that's odd. Why are they suturing around there? So that would make sense.
And finally, for me, did Mr. Dixon make any remarks while that was happening?
He did. Again, insulting the doctors, speaking to his victim, and maybe I'll let you two repeat it. I just, Leslie's sitting right here. What's that?
Did he appear to be in any pain?
Yes. He grimaced a couple times while the IVs were going in. Once the drugs started flowing, he went to sleep almost immediately.
And he never made eye contact with anyone?
Never. No. And this is my fourth execution I've witnessed. I've been on this beat a long time, and that's the first time I remember that happening, him never ever looking over towards anybody. Right?
No, he
What?
didn't. Leslie said it's okay to say the comments about Dina.
Okay. So Leslie just gave me the okay to talk about some of the things that he said. Let me get to my notes. His very last words after the drugs went in at 10:19, maybe I'll see you on the other side, Dina. I don't know you and I don't remember you. Those were his final words. And after that, he fell asleep. The doctors. This is really funny. You're being as thorough as possible as you try to kill me. How twisted is this? You worship death, don't you? And then he said, I know you're seeing this, Dina. You know I didn't kill you. And then he said, make sure you miss the first time right and teach me a lesson. He's talking about the IVs to the doctors. Then the doctor said something to him, and he said, is that your best doctor voice? Thought you had a Hippocratic oath. Bet the money is better here, though. And I think he said one more thing that I didn't write down.
Troy, can you give us that chronology again from the time?
So at 10:13, the medical technician or doctor walked away from Dixon, basically giving a nod saying that all the IVs were in. At 10:17 is when the death warrant was read. At 10:19, we all witnessed, the actual insertion of the drugs from the syringes that are behind a wall, but there's a camera going down on them, into the IV lines at 10:19. At 10:22, I made a note, and I actually leaned over to Judy and made a comment, but he went slack, his mouth opened up like he was in a deep sleep, and I couldn't see his chest moving up and down anymore. So that would be 3 minutes. At 10:27, the technician walked back into the room, checked for a pulse, and then walked out, said something to the warden, and the warden said, inmate sedated at 10:28. And then at 10:30, he got some sort of a word from that back room, the warden did, and the warden said, execution is complete. So from the time the drugs, from my notes, at 10:19, when the drugs first went in, the execution was complete at 10:30. So that would be, what, 11 minutes?
Did you make any movements as the chemicals were being injected or anything that looked like he was in any kind of suffering or pain?
No, the only time that he showed any signs of any pain or discomfort was when the IVs were going in. And he had basically grimaced straight up into the ceiling. Nothing audible with that, no audible complaints.
Troy, was he trying to be physically combative, or was it just the words he was saying?
Yeah, no, even if you try to be physically combative, I don't know if you've ever seen that table, there are two body straps, it's like a 5-point harness in like a plane, so he's strapped like this, his body, and then both his extremities are down. So I don't know. I didn't see any fighting. His head went up and down a couple times. He had a small coughing fit that had nothing to do, I don't think, with anything. It was well before any drugs were near him.
Troy, you had said this was his last words. Maybe I'll see you on the other side, Dina. I don't know you and I don't remember you. Those were his very last words?
Right. So he was given an opportunity to give his last words. Then the drugs were administered. Almost immediately after the drugs were beginning to be administered, he uttered that. Taylor from KTAR.
Hi, my name is Taylor Tassler. I'm with KTAR. This is the first execution I've ever witnessed. We went Tasler.
Thank you.
When we entered the room, I noticed Dixon was counting on his fingers like this, and then at one point just continued to hold his middle finger down. He did that throughout the entirety of the execution almost. Like Troy said, he was looking at the ceiling. He kind of moved around, but he never made eye contact with anyone that I saw. I have that at... Once the drugs were administered, I kind of heard a gasp. His jaw dropped. He had a deep swallow, and that was about it. I never saw any movement after that either. And all the same last words that Troy mentioned are what I had written down as well.
What was he wearing? Was he holding anything of significance?
He was in an orange jumpsuit. It looked like shorts, so they could have access to his legs, and it had short sleeves, so he was wearing an orange jumpsuit. But he was also, when we first walked in, covered by like a cloth up to here, but his arms were out. And then as they started moving to his leg, they pulled over the sheet a little bit, and we could see his legs as well, and he had socks on.
Did he have any kind of, I guess, religious ceremony beforehand, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Troy had also mentioned that he had said, I know you're seeing this, Dina, you know I didn't kill you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have that as well.
When did he say that? Before the injection?
Yes, before the injection. I have that at about 10:04 is when he made that remark.
And what did the doctors, did they respond as he was insulting them?
The only thing I ever heard the doctors say to him was when they were injecting a shot into him or a needle into him, and they said, you might feel a little bit of a sting. That was the only exchange I heard from the doctors.
Can you describe who was also in the room witnessing, how big it was, how many people were there?
There were 2 medical staff, and then I would say there were about four corrections officers. I'm assuming they were covered. They had masks on. They were all wearing black, sunglasses, some of them did. So there were about 4 of them, and then the 2 medical members, and then Dixon.
And what about in the media with you along in the room?
We counted about a total of 23 witnesses, but there were also some staffing in there as well. Yeah.
Could you tell if the witnesses were like government or officials, or who they all were besides obviously you guys and the family?
It was unclear who everyone was. There was one officer that I noticed, but other than that, I couldn't tell who everyone else
You didn't hear
was.
that Dixon had any friends or family there on his behalf?
I wasn't made aware of if anyone was on there for him. I know I heard that maybe his lawyers might have been there, but I'm not positive.
Were there any elected officials in the witnessing room?
Not that I saw. Did you?
Not that we recognized.
Attorney General Brnovich?
No, he was not there.
Director Shin? David Shin?
Not that.
I guess this being your first execution and you didn't know what to expect, what was your reaction?
It was very quick, and obviously from going into this, I did some research on past executions and spoke to people who have also witnessed executions, so I expected, you know, a gulp, maybe some movement of the hand, so it was a lot less than what I was expecting. He took a breath in, opened his mouth, and that was about it. There wasn't, once he had been injected, there wasn't really any movement with his hands or anything, so it was pretty simple and seemed like it went according to plan.
Do you know how many doses of the execution drug were used?
I'm not positive. I think there were 2. Is that correct
There
from
were
the book?
8 syringes there, and I'm not clear on how many doses were meant for each, but only 4 of the 8 I saw were depressed.
And that information's in the 710 handbook as well, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can check Department Order 710 for that information.
Well, sometimes it differs though, depending on what's in the order versus what is actually administered.
Yeah, we're not gonna speak to operational procedures at this time regarding the execution. I would refer you to Department Order 710.
Taylor, can you discuss, like Troy did, just what your view of the difficulty inserting the IVs was?
Yeah, so again, I've never seen this before, so they started out on his left arm, then they shortly moved over to the right arm, got it in there. It seemed, I would say, when did they start working on his leg? Once they got an insertion into his arm, that was pretty quick, and then they moved on to his leg, and they started doing that around 9:58, and by 10:02, it seemed that everything had been inserted in the leg. It didn't seem like there was too much difficulty other than trying to get it into the left arm.
Can you describe the temperament of the people doing the insertion of the IV? Was it calm? Was there panic? Was there...
No, it seemed calm. We obviously couldn't see their faces. They were covered with a mask and had hairnets and covering glasses for their eyes, so we couldn't really see any facial expressions, but their body language was calm and just moving along through the steps.
Yeah, Paul Davenport with AP. I can't add to what people heard him say. Others had a better hearing of it than I did. I will respond further. Somebody asked a question about whether there was a cut down. I don't have a medical background, but I did see what appeared to me to be some cutting when they were doing the feed in the thigh area. There was also a fair amount of wiping of what appeared to be blood after that when they were wrapping up. You know, I'm not talking about a gushing stream or anything like that. Just a small amount of blood they did have to wipe up. Any other questions?
What about the checking the audio? I thought the audio from inside is new with this execution. Is that correct? That you could hear what was going on inside?
You could hear it. I didn't find it crystal clear. Perhaps it's my hearing, perhaps it's the audio, hard to tell. I had a hard time making out his voice often because he has a very soft voice. So you had a microphone hanging from the ceiling that may have been lowered, I don't know. They had another one right on his shirt, so you could have a better hearing of what he was saying or any noises he was making. He wasn't making many. Then we've already talked about the screens. That's new. On each side of the visitation room, you had the same image of the looking down on him shot, as it were. And then in the middle, you had one screen that had the tight close-up of the sets of injection drugs, and that's all you saw. You occasionally saw some hands, blue-gloved hands, reach down and manipulate one or two of them at a time. I had a hard time actually discerning what was happening in what order, but it appeared they opened up valves and let it flow from 4 of them, a set of 4, one set. I think the protocols say they have to have a backup set as well.
And Paul or Troy or Taylor, can you describe his tone of voice when he was saying these things you heard?
He seemed defiant to me. Yeah, like, I'm not going along with this easily, and how can you do this to me? And I'm innocent, and, you know, basically that. It wasn't pleasant.
No, it was a conversational sound of voice, albeit with a sharp edge to it, but it wasn't screaming or yelling, anything like that.
What is your impression about Dixon's, I guess, mentality? There's a lot of argument that he was not mentally competent, but I mean, it kind of sounds like he knew what was going on and he knew why he was being executed, right?
I can't speak to everything of that, but I can say when his last words, he obviously knew what he wanted to say. He clearly said them. At least they were articulated at his end well. I couldn't hear them word for word very well, but they were clear. They were said, and he got into some specifics, talking to the victim and referencing the Arizona Supreme Court in some specificity.
And did it appear that he was blind and disabled, like his lawyers claimed, or could you tell?
I don't know if he was blind. As Troy said, he didn't look at us. I didn't see him visually reacting to things. And as far as him being disabled, I don't know, other than I saw his head move side to side, up and down. I saw his mouth open. I saw his eyes occasionally open. I saw him twitch his hands periodically, and also with the finger gestures that my colleague has already referenced. So there was movement, what appeared to be purposeful movement.
Finger gestures? What do you mean by finger gestures?
He appeared to go like this, what I would call rolling his fingers, and then maybe holding them. I think my colleague described seeing that.
Yeah, it looked like he was almost counting on his
Yeah.
fingertips throughout the
Yeah. At one point, I wondered whether the fingers meant anything in terms of a gesture, but it didn't appear so.
When you reference the Supreme Court, was it in reference to the legal arguments they've been making about a judicial, he believes there's a judicial conspiracy against him, or was it that specific, or?
I don't feel adequate to answer that. I don't think I got as well of a hearing of his actual words as my colleagues did.
Was there anything that surprised you about the process or about Dixon, seeing Dixon?
I've done several executions a long time ago, and very little of this surprised me, because I think I've seen the procedures largely done in a similar fashion with less or more success in terms of the veins. So no surprises. That it? Okay.
Good morning. Colleen Clace, attorney for Leslie James. The execution of Clarence Wayne Dixon has finally, after more than 44 years, brought a close to the criminal case of the murder of Leslie James's sister, Dina. Leslie has grieved for Dina all of these years, and she will continue to grieve for Dina. Arizona's Victims' Bill of Rights provides victims like Leslie with a constitutional right to a speedy trial and to a prompt and final conclusion of the case after the conviction and sentence. Dixon was not held accountable for Dina's murder for close to 25 years. After he was charged, this case took more than 5 years to go to trial, due largely to extensions of mitigation and other deadlines and continuances of trial dates. After his conviction and sentence in 2008, it took more than 12 years for his remedies to be exhausted, and he was afforded every available due process remedy. The U.S. Supreme Court denied his cert petition on May 26, 2020, so nearly 2 years have passed since his remedies have been exhausted. While a conclusion to this case seemed out of reach for many years, Leslie never gave up seeking justice for Dina. She participated throughout the criminal justice process and exercised her rights, her constitutional and statutory rights until the very end. Leslie is extremely grateful to the multiple agencies and criminal justice professionals who have worked over the years to seek justice for Dina. This includes the Tempe Police Department for their dedication to finding Dina's killer, to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for prosecuting this case, and for their appearance at Dixon's recent clemency hearing. Attorney General Mark Brunovich and his staff working to ensure that Dixon's conviction and sentence was upheld. Leslie is especially grateful for the team of assistant attorney generals who have worked around the clock this last week to respond to Dixon's multiple legal challenges. To Governor Ducey and his staff for their commitment to finding justice for victims. And last, to the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation and Reentry, especially the Victim Services Unit, for the support that they have provided to Leslie. Leslie will now make a statement. I would ask members of the media to please remain respectful of her views.
Thank you. I'm Dina's older sister. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the media today. You know, for over 44 years, members of the media may have been available to me, but I generally withheld any public comments. I was concerned that the justice process that has brought us together today could have been jeopardized. But today that process has been finalized. I can't begin to name everyone that deserves thanks. But I have to honor and thank my husband, Mick, who I just lost 12 days ago, for his support and love over all these years. I believe that now he's reunited with my parents and with Dina, and he met Dina when she was 14 years old. Okay. To begin, since you're my audience, I need to say to you, after all these years, that your words can hurt, but your words can help and heal also. Please think about that as you write. Over these years, I've seen a distinct shift away from human compassion and acknowledgement of victims' rights and issues and beyond factual reporting, toward advocacy for violent offenders and political posturing. What societal interest does that serve? Especially when there is absolutely no question of guilt, as in this case. Recognizing that we all live in a social media world of sound bites, here are some facts and some kind of by the numbers that are important to me and I thought you may be interested in. From high to low. 1 in 17 octillion. The results of the recent DNA test reporting the likelihood that Dina's murderer was anyone other than this inmate. Octillion has 27 zeros, by the way. I didn't know that. 43 in 20. The number of hearings I have attended over 20 years since indictment. 21, 23, 45, and 46. The ages when Dina's, my, and my parents' lives were either taken or irreparably changed due to this inmate's choices and actions. 17. The number of minutes the Maricopa County jury deliberated before they found this inmate guilty of the first-degree murder of Dina. 13. The number of women that this inmate victimized, at least those whose names we know. 8. The number of college hours Dina had left to graduate from ASU and begin her post-college life. I appreciate ASU awarding her degree to me posthumously just 2 years ago. And finally, 1 and 0. The number of sisters I had up until and after January 7th, 1978, and now. Let me tell you just a little bit about Dina. In 4 words, she was kind and hardworking. As a little kid, she had a really bad case of valley fever and missed much of a school year. But she worked really hard in school and caught up, and we were both blessed with having a 2nd grade teacher for a mother. Dina was multilingual, which she used in her travels and schools abroad to make friends. She wrote amazing poetry. We didn't know this until I found a notebook of her work as I cleaned out her apartment that January. My mom's victim impact statement to the jury included one of those poems. Older people and dogs really seem to take a liking to her, and I think that has to say something about her character. Although we looked a lot alike in our younger years, she was more personable and friendly. And she was the one who was supposed to have an exciting career, get married, and produce grandkids for my mom. But it didn't work out that way for her. We should have been able to grow old together. You know, as sisters will do, we fought, we hugged, and we negotiated our way through 21 years together. I have indelible memories of her driving up to Flagstaff in her little green Pinto to see me at college. And I cherish our train travels in Europe during one of her last summers. I wish you all could have known her. I have just one request of you. All my mom ever wanted was that people would remember Dina. Please remember Dina Lynn Bowden. And I will now answer any questions you may have about her. Thank you.
Can you talk about how you're feeling? I mean, 44 years, is this
Old?
closure, or
No.
what are the emotions going through your mind?
You know, I hate that word. Everyone is different. This is finality for this process, and it's relief. It was way too long. This process was way, way, way too long. And in the whole scheme of the system, I think this really was one of the shorter ones. Could I have a nap? Oh, Kleenex, sorry. How am I feeling? He didn't ingratiate himself to me at all. I saw him for 5 years going to hearings. I saw him every day in trial. And why am I not surprised that he chose to use my sister's name? In the days to come, I'm sure that there will be, you know, this has been a large part. You know, as I said, I'm old. This has been a very large part of my life, but not all of my life. I had a son that we lost. I've now lost my husband. My parents are both gone now. And but I have my career. I have my friends. I have all of my family that are just wonderful. And I have my dogs, my shelter dogs, and there's nothing like them. So, you know, I don't know how I'm going to feel.
If not closure, then do you feel like justice has been served?
Yes, the process is final. Yes. There was, as I said in my statement, and you know, at the time the defense pushed yet again for another round of DNA testing, I thought, what now? You know, here we go again, something else. 1 in 17 octillion, really? Are they glad that they had that testing? And you know, and as I said, there was never ever any doubt in this inmate murdered my sister.
Leslie, thank you for taking our questions. I'm Shaylee Sanders with KLD in Tucson. When you were preparing for today, did you have expectations what he might say, what you hoped he might say, or his final words?
Maybe I'll just respond in what I said when I appeared before the Board of Executive Clemency. When was that? A week ago? 2 weeks ago? And what I said to them at that time was, he made choices. He chose not to even respect that board to appear. and therefore I'm not even going to waste any more breath or words on him. I'm not surprised that he spoke. That's all I'm going to say.
Leslie, you've talked about wanting to make sure that the memory of Dina lives on. As her older sister, what do you miss the most about her?
She knew no enemies. She, as I said, we got to spend, we were lucky enough that we got to spend 3 months riding trains around Europe. These days, would you let a daughter at that age spend 3 months riding trains in Europe? I wouldn't. But we did, and everywhere we went, everywhere. She met people. As I said, she was multilingual. She was just a happy, giving person. And I used to call her jokey. You know, I miss her being jokey. I was always the more serious one, and she loved her life.
What was she planning, I mean, what was her degree in? What was she planning to do? What did Dixon rob his world out of?
You know, she was going into international marketing. As I said, she had about 8 hours left to graduate. She always worked. At the time she was murdered, she was working part-time for a patent attorney. It was hard to say. She talked about going into foreign service. She loved traveling, though, and she was fortunate to be able to go to school in Mexico one summer. She spent one summer in Spain. As I said, she picked up languages. You know, my mom heard her talking in her sleep one time in Spanish. And so I think she could have done anything she wanted. She had recently learned to scuba dive and met a new group of friends there. Anything she did, she met friends. So I think the world lost a good one when she was taken.
Ms. James, do you feel comfortable responding to people who are opposed to the death penalty? Do you feel comfortable saying something to those people?
Sure. The death penalty is currently the law in the state of Arizona. Without repeating something that we heard a little while ago, the courts, the administration, whatever you want to call them, law enforcement, they have to follow the law in this state, and that is the law in this state. And everyone can have their own personal opinion on the death penalty. Mine sure changed. I started in sociology when I started in college, and I changed my major, but my thinking has changed and evolved having gone through this. I think that, again, it's a very personal, everyone grieves personally and differently. And so I can't speak poorly for people that may be opposed to the death penalty, but I would just say, if related to any law, if you don't care for the law that's in place, then there are steps to try to get the law changed, but that is the law.
Would you recommend the law be changed?
No.
And would you feel comfortable telling us how you said your thinking has changed? Would you feel comfortable telling us how?
My thinking has changed most recently, I would say, in probably the last 1 year. And as you know, as I said, I attended every hearing, and I've read every pleading. I've read pleadings in his prior cases, and where my thinking has changed is that the balance, that those of us that are going through this kind of a process, sure, we have a Crime Victims Bill of Rights in this state, which is quite progressive compared to some other states. But compared to the, what's the right word? Compared to the protections, opportunities, and processes that are afforded people that are convicted of crimes, it's out of balance. It should not take this long to get to a final dispensation of what the law provides. It should never take this long.
I'm sorry, only if you're comfortable, but so how did you change though? How did you know, what was it that changed? Were you once not sure how you felt about the death penalty?
I had no idea that it would take this long.
Okay, we're going to move on to one final question. Does anybody have one final question, and then we're going to wrap up the press conference?
My condolences on the loss.
Thank you.
Because it's been a really tough time for you layered on with this. I know folks often talk to people who we've lost. You talk to Dina, and if you could talk to her today, what would you say?
She knows. She knows. That's all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. This will conclude our press conference. Please note that we do not want you to conduct media interviews in this room with the media witnesses. We have vans that will take you back to the media staging parking area. Then you can, if you wish to, and if they are agreeable to, you can conduct further interviews with the media witnesses. We have our vans that are ready for you to take you back to that area. You're welcome to stay out there for however long you need to file your reports, do stand-ups, etc. And that'll be back in the media staging parking area. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you. Reach out if you want any other additional things I can help you with. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you being here.
We ride that with these guys?